Britain likes to tell itself a comforting story about policing. Ours is different, ours is gentler, because it's based on trust, not fear. And I've certainly been in countries where the police do not look like you want to mess with them. We say policing by consent, the way Americans say free speech, like it's always been there and always will. But here's the awkward truth. Consent wasn't guaranteed, it was conditional, and we've quietly broken the conditions. To understand how, we have to go back to the original bargain, the one laid down in the 19th century by Sir Robert Peel. And no, it's not a history lesson. Before Peel, policing in Europe meant soldiers in the street, or night watchmen who are pretty incompetent. The state watching the people, order imposed from above. Britain chose a different route. Peel's idea was simple, radical and deeply British. If you want order, you don't terrorise the public, you win their agreement. So the police would not be a separate force. There wouldn't be an occupying power. There would be citizens in uniform. And that's where the phrase comes from. The police are the public and the public are the police. Not a slogan, not marketing, not a warning, because the moment that stops being true, the whole thing collapses. Peel was explicit. Police power is delegated. It's not owned, it's not permanent, it's not conditional. Every stop, every order, every arrest was meant to rest on a shared understanding. This is legitimate because we broadly agree with it. Now think about modern Britain. What do the police really answer to? Local communities? Or national directives, central targets and Home Office priorities? Most people couldn't name a local commander. And when we do see them, it's generally embarrassing. People can list the things they're not allowed to do anymore because consent doesn't survive abstraction. This is a problem. The line Peel will be most shocked at today is the police force. He believed the force was proof policing had already failed. And an officer had to reach for violence, the system had broken. It had lost its legitimacy. Today it's been rebranded and it's a force. Batons have become public order tactics. Mass arrests become preventative action. Riot gear becomes visibility. We don't even pretend anymore that force is exceptional. We often plan for it. And once force becomes routine, consent becomes optional. Impartiality was always the cornerstone. Peel insisted the law must be enforced equally without fear or favour. Does anyone really believe that this happens today? When the police are caught shipping protesters to a protest, or at least counter-protesters, it's broadly believed that protests are policed differently depending on who's protesting, what they believe, and how politically inconvenient they are. Some groups are kettled, some groups are escorted, some groups are ignored, some groups are criminalised. And people have noticed. You don't need to read policy documents to feel selective enforcement. Look at the lady who was arrested for feeding the pigeons at a spot where people are normally urinating in the street and getting drunk and smoking drugs. None of those get arrested because it's too troublesome to arrest them, but she was an easy target. When someone's an easy target, it tells you that it's not consent. The British Bobby wasn't just visible, they were known. It was the same face, the same patch, problems solved informally. That wasn't nostalgia, that was design. Now visibility means something else entirely. It means automatic number plate recognition, body-worn cameras, facial recognition vans quietly parked on high streets, public order units drafted in from nowhere. The police are everywhere, but somehow nowhere, and nowhere familiar. Seen constantly, known hardly at all, and you can't consent to a relationship that doesn't exist. So several things went wrong. Centralisation. Local accountability was hollowed out. National priorities moved in, and communities stopped shaping policing. But community leaders didn't, or at least some of them. Then secondly, there's politics. Police were dragged into the culture wars they were never meant to fight. Protest, free speech, symbolic enforcement of laws. Neutrality didn't fail loudly. It quietly eroded as they embraced one side of each argument. Say something mean on Twitter, there'll be 6 policemen at your door. Steal a phone and they'll get a crime number. I always refer back to Legal 101 on crimes. A crime is a real offence against a real person. But you don't need a real person for a non-crime hate incident. And they generally don't cause you much bother. Thirdly, technology. Surveillance scaled faster than trust ever could, and consent became irrelevant when compliance could be automated. None of this required villains, just incentives, fear, and a steady widening of distance. And the police also weren't protected. If a policeman shoots a gangster who's driving a car that was involved with a shooting, it's the policeman who gets prosecuted. It's the policeman who gets harassed. It's the policeman who gets named. Yet the irony is Britain still quotes Peel, still teaches the principles, still claims moral exceptionalism. We kept the symbols and dropped the substance. We kept the uniform, the authority, but we abandoned the consent. We just used the word. And here's the thing Peel understood better than we do. You can't police without consent, and you certainly can't do it forever. Eventually, order maintained without agreement turns into order maintained through pressure, and pressure builds resentment. And Britain invented policing by consent and then wasted it. Maybe it's time we reset to Peel's original radical idea. A policing that protects people from harm, including harm by the state. Looking back at the Peelian principles, the core idea that the police are the public and the public are the police. Not above the public, not separate from the public, not feared by the public, but part of it. And that power is borrowed, but is delegated, not owned. Whilst we've given up on policemen on the beat that give a community feel, we've also not centralised enough, in that you can live in a little village that happens to be in the wrong geographic place, so it sits in a different county. And whilst there's a police station 5 miles away, the nearest one that can serve you is 30 miles away. We've known about county lines gangs for decades, but what have we done about it other than talk about it? We need a return to law being applied equally, visibility that builds trust, and a centralisation of strategy, and frankly a different set of police leaders, because how many of them impress you? There must be one there somewhere. It's not the frontline police that are to blame for this failure of police. It's decades of leaders with gold-plated pensions and no accountability, just like we saw in the West Midlands recently. I'm not resigning. I might retire for a second time. In my life, I've seen more laws passed, more powers requested, and more distance created between the police and the public. We need a return to the idea that policing is for the public, not over the public.